Hello everyone. I think I will jump right in at the deep end by saying that I absolutely reject and oppose the war that Russian Federation, the country that I happen to be a citizen of, fares against the independent country of Ukraine. So if this declaration of mine upsets you, makes you unhappy and prone to writing aggressive comments, please refrain and sign off this video altogether. Thank you. And to the rest of you who decided to stay and listen to my unscripted ramblings, thank you very much for that. I appreciate. I decided to share with you a little life update about how did my life, the life of a Russian citizen living abroad, I'm living in Berlin for the last 7 years, how it changed after the 24th of February when the war began, whether I have been discriminated or faced this russophobia. Spoiler alert, I haven't. What am I doing? How am I coping? What are my plans for the channel? I would also explain why am I filming here at this location. Actually, I wanted to share it with you even before. I planned to do it in a short format, but I had to wait for the trees to bloom. But now, I think I have thought of a nice way to tie the history of this place with the current events. So, stick with me. I'm Katya, and this is Russians living abroad while their country fares an aggressive war. Explained, I guess. And one more time, a disclaimer. I think there definitely is a need for that. Everything that I will be telling you today, it is my personal experience. In no way am I preaching or instructing anyone to act or to think in a certain way. So everything that I say is purely my opinion, my experience, what I've seen with my own eyes, and what I genuinely think and feel. And of course, at all times, I always acknowledge that everything else pales. All my petty grievances and little inconveniences, they pale in comparison with the sufferings of the Ukrainian people. Those who have lost their loved ones, those who has lost their houses, those who had to flee their country, only their clothes on their backs. Everyone who is suffering and is morally tormented by what's happening, I possibly cannot fathom that, and I won't pretend that I can, because it is impossible. But I always remember that, and it is always at the back of my mind all the time. So I would appreciate if you also keep it at the back of yours, so I won't have to repeat myself again and again. So all the things considered, today's word of the day would be privilege. In reality, I'm extremely lucky and privileged because after all, my family, we haven't been affected by the war. Both our families are in Russia. So far, they haven't been directly affected as well. None of our friends or relatives lost anyone to the war or have been forced to fight in the war, as far as we know. On the 24th of February, our lives, they changed irrevocably, and it is not a figure of speech. It maybe sounds a little bit pompous, but it feels as if your life has changed forever, and you haven't asked for it, and you have no power over it. It makes you physically ill. Your stomach sinks to the bottom. and stays there. You kind of cannot concentrate on anything. You feel apathetic. You have very low energy, and such a state it remained for about 2 weeks. And still, I'm not particularly energetic. It reminds when you have been suddenly betrayed by a loved one. I think every one of us experienced that at least once. I, again, am extremely lucky that such events in my life, they can be counted with the fingers of one hand. And most of them, they happened like in my tremulous 20s. So for like almost a decade, I enjoyed like a pretty emotionally uneventful life and had been happy with it. But everything changed almost 2 months ago. So on the 24th of February, when I woke up, and I reached for my phone to check for messages. And the first message that I saw was the one from a friend of mine who asked whether I am joining the anti-war rally this day. And my first reaction was no. And it is a bit significant because now it is a shameful thing to admit, but I used to be completely apolitical, not interested in it altogether, and now I feel guilt about it. I bear the responsibility of what happened with our country because of that inertia that I, along with other young people, displayed. In the early 2000s, as soon as I got the right to vote, I voted a couple of times because it was like a novelty and a new experience, but of course I didn't think much. But after that, I think I haven't been attending any elections. At first it was like, I'm happy how it's going, so no need to change anything. And later it was, we cannot possibly change anything. Nothing depends on us. Very perilous thing, as we can see now. And after that, in 2015 we left. We left Russia and we moved to Germany. It wasn't purely a political thing, at least on my part. Yes, this move, it has been accelerated by the annexation of Crimea, but that rationale, it was mainly on the part of my husband, because at that time I ridiculed him and called him paranoid, but he was really worried that the Iron Curtain would drop and we would be locked in this country forever. So nowadays I'm speaking so freely because, again, I had the privilege to live outside of Russia and I cannot be prosecuted. And many times we discussed that were we still in Russia, we wouldn't have been so bold in expressing our opinion. On the other hand, it is highly unlikely that haven't we left in 2015, we still have remained in Russia up until now. Because even before Crimea, even before I met my husband who shared my values and my interests, I was keen on at least living abroad for some time. My English was fluent and I always loved traveling, and I have been traveling a lot since my university years, and I wanted to see the world. So a next natural step would be to live abroad, to experience life abroad, not just like a tourist, but like a citizen for some time. And it's absolutely aligned with the interests of my husband. So if not Germany, then it could have been Canada, US, Australia. Singapore was also on the table at some point. So we would have definitely moved sooner or later. After we left, we also have been pretty inert when it comes to political activism here, because we thought that, well, we showed our attitude towards the country by leaving and reading it from us, like the high-paid, well-educated specialists and taxpayers. And that was it. So when I was asked whether I'm going to an anti-war rally, I said no. It was like my initial instinctive reaction. But then, of course, I started reading news and found out that the war has started. It was my immediate reaction that it is wrong, and wrong on the part of Russia. That's why later I wrote and said that, of course, I'm coming. And it is actually the very first time in my life that I went to such a demo. I didn't want to what to do, and I asked my friends for instructions. That was the moment that was very clear to me, is the point of no return. Identity-defining moment when if you stay silent and you keep being apolitical, you are no longer a decent person. So it felt really important, and I think the second thing after I confirmed that I'm coming to a rally and I'm cancelling my other plans, I wrote this community post on my YouTube channel that it would be suspended and I won't be publishing anything. And yeah, I'm still stand there, so my opinion hasn't changed since this 2 horrible months that the war is going. And at the beginning there really was hope that it might end quickly and that there either some part of the government or the people, they would rebel and riot and overthrow the government, and everything would change. But the longer it goes, the more clear it is that it's not happening. It's there to stay, and it's really hard, especially after the initial shock, like this physically feeling ill. After this phase passed, the next thing that I'm kind of bombarded every day is endless string of disappointments. I sometimes go to this Russian-controlled social media, the VK, ВКонтакте, and there you can see the posts that people you are friends with comment or like, and from those reactions it's clear their position, and you're like, oh no, not you too. At the beginning I thought that it's mostly like in the middle-aged or old people who watch TV, and that I could understand because I felt firsthand how powerful it is and how mind-twisting and how ridiculously easy it is to twist the words and the facts and the emotions. But to see that people of my age, educated people, also find rationale, to find excuses why this war is okay, and yeah, I cannot fathom that. So yeah, I'm mostly okay. I'm doing way better than, well, I mentioned Ukrainians, of course, already, but way better than the Russians that are in Russia, those who are against the war and they cannot leave because they don't have the funds or they don't know language or they have other like financial or moral obligations. Those who have left without much and they're like drifting, eating through their savings without any clear perspectives. Those who still are undecided about the war, who say that it's not all that clear, we cannot know the entire truth, you know, but still I really cannot wish that they suffer, although sometimes my bloodthirsty side wakes up and wishes that their eventual awakening would be really hard and like of soul-wrenching. Compared to that, we have it like extremely easy. We are in a safe place. We kind of freely express our displeasure, to put it mildly, where we can actively help the refugees, and this way we can kind of balance our feeling of helplessness because we cannot actively stop the war from happening, but at least we have a possibility in so many ways to apply ourselves to helping those in need most. Some people in Russia can find ways to do that as well, but it is much harder. The Russian-speaking community, we used to call it Russian, but of course it united people from all the ex-Soviet countries, and we were really united in our opposition to the war. We are extremely lucky that we are in Berlin. that is a big hub for the refugees who flee Ukraine, and that we have an opportunity to join in the volunteering effort. And almost everyone I know is doing something. So they're either actively volunteering and working with the refugees, or they're on the phone, or they're sorting the humanitarian aid, or they're driving their private cars to the Polish border to fetch refugees. I personally work on the main train station since the first week of the war, when the first trains with the refugees started arriving. This train station is huge. It has like 5 levels. It's extremely confusing, but I already know it by heart. I kind of find my way with my eyes closed. And they just desperately need people who speak Russian or Ukrainian, and that I also know English and German is a big asset. And you have to direct people, like help them find where their train is departing from which platform, to show them where the toilets are, where they can buy tickets, help them with the translation, that kind of stuff. Additionally, my team, we deal with the underage kids who travel alone. So sometimes the parents, they cannot leave themselves, so they send their 16, 17-year-olds with some relatives or friends. So we have to make sure that they are safely on the way and that there would really be reliable people meeting them. I find that at this moment it's really a right place for me. The most important thing that I can do at the moment, not only because of the language, but also that I feel that I have the emotional and psychological resources to do that. I was never a very emotional person, and this time it plays to my advantage that I don't break down and start sobbing uncontrollably, because the amount of misery and grief is really heartbreaking. So this empty, haunted stairs of children, mothers and pets, it's very hard to bear. But it's also kind of healing. It might sound ridiculous, but it's really, really helping us cope. And I'm really grateful for what I have here and what I can do here. Additionally, it helps to realize that all this rhetoric about the russophobia and that Russians would now be discriminated is a complete bullshit. Well, it's not, but it really alleviates your fears that you might be discriminated because you, for example, speak Russian. This is completely ridiculous. And I have to admit that at the beginning, when the war just started and I haven't begun to volunteer yet, I immediately embraced that, yes, there would be discrimination of Russians, not discrimination, but kind of a guarded attitude towards us. It won't be at the level that the Russian propaganda tells us, because it really blows every single act of vandalism or some brawl between the Russians and the Ukrainians out of proportion, and they start to shout, "Hey, you see, there's Russophobia, they always hated us, now they have justification to do that." This is completely ridiculous, but I am prepared, and I came to terms that there would be Russophobia in years to come. It would, of course, depend on the outcome of the war, but I think already enough grief has been dealt to the Ukrainians, and enough crimes have been done to paint us all as the new baddies. But at the moment, we are still in our social bubbles, where everyone that we contact with are either people that we have already known or the refugees. And when they see you at first, most of them, they don't ask where are you from? And most of them, like 80% of them, they speak Russian. In my experience, there have been maybe like a couple of times there were people from West Ukraine who didn't speak. But in that case, I kind of ask their question in Ukrainian and I answer them in Russian. And it's okay because both of us, they want to be helped. I sincerely want to help, and it worked out. So never in my experience have I been kind of told that don't speak Russian with me. Never. And I cannot possibly imagine in what way should I act for it to happen. But I think after some time, like in some years, when the kids who were under the fire, who were sitting in the cellars and for whom this hatred towards the Russian soldiers who forced them to experience that, it was fueling their energy to go on. When they would grow up and they meet a Russian person, their meeting might turn out quite unpleasant, to say the least. And of course, on the government level, there might be some hardships, especially if we would now change like our place of residence, move to another district or another city, and there we have to start anew and to meet new people. And when they ask you where are you from and you say from Russia, there might be a pause during which you might be quick to say like, yeah, I don't support the war. It seems a little bit ridiculous. We were already joking about tattooing our position on our forehead, so we don't have to repeat it again and again. And that is sometimes the reason why some people are so bitter about the upcoming russophobia, that it is unfair. I understand, but I think it is justified. We have to come to terms that we have to be more humble, and we should always say we are sorry in advance. That's the way we have to act from now on. This is our new reality, and the sooner we come to terms with it, the better. Once we talk about new reality, finally, it's time to talk about my channel. I already said that for us personally, nothing changed since the war started, but of course, apart from my channel, and although it is completely insignificant in comparison with everything else, but this is my personal grievance and my personal beef with Putin and this stupid, pointless, suicidal war, is that I had to stop doing my channel. I have to be clear here, it's not that I'm punishing myself or punishing you or punishing the Russian culture that doesn't deserve to be explained anymore. It's just at the moment I simply have no emotional resources and no time resources to do that. Most of my free time I volunteer. Apart from that, I have pretty low energy at the moment. In my free time, I read young adult urban fantasy novels. I watch YouTube, but mostly connected with the war, like interviews and news and updates. Meet with friends, and that's it. At the moment, the idea of writing a script, writing jokes, filming with a smile on my face, it's inconceivable. I'm really bitter about it, that this idea that I thought that was unique, and I'm really proud of what I was doing, and I was really passionate about this project, but I think that the war destroyed it, because one of my manifests when I started, and it's still on my channel, was that I wanted to dissuade the certain myths and to demonize the Soviet Union for the Western audience by showing it from the inside. And now the country has demonized itself again, completely. I know that Russia doesn't equal the Soviet Union, but still, it's a most part of it. And I, being a Russian myself, I can with authority speak mostly about Russia. And in general, I think that if I have to do like some moral exercises and to rationalize for myself why or in which format I should continue making videos, maybe it's best not to. If it feels not right in your gut, that's better not. And I completely can understand those vloggers who said that, but it's my job, I have obligations. So really here I'm privileged again to make my own decisions. And at the moment the decision is to suspend the channel. I'm really unhappy about it. So it's not that anyone made me do it, but I couldn't have acted otherwise. I'm not saying that I would never resume, but at least until the war ends, I definitely won't be posting my usual content. Maybe you can help me by proposing what topics would be interesting for you, but honestly, at the moment I cannot find a subject that I would be interested in covering. So yeah, this is how it is at the moment. And I think I would be wrapping up now. It feels like a complete mess, everything that I told at the moment. I wonder how it would come out in editing. It would be a complete nightmare to edit. I can already feel that in advance. That's what happens when you don't have a script. But I wanted to finish the story about this place. This is their cherry blossom alley. It is located at the place where the Berlin Wall stood, separating the East Berlin from West Berlin. And it is located near the Bornholmer Bridge. And this is exactly the place where the wall was opened on the 9th of November in 1989. So the first point of entry on the day when the wall fell, it was exactly here. Moreover, my friend has two neighbors who still live in the house where they have been living more than 30 years ago. So they were like the first-hand witnesses of this event. I personally heard them telling this story. Already then there were a lot of protests going on in East Germany, in Berlin, in Leipzig, all over the place that people demanded to be free to cross over and to travel. But they say that on that night when the Berlin Wall fell, they were in a bar, in a Kneipe, and they discussed that it won't happen, that the DDR, it would keep on going for like decades, and not in their lifetime they would see the unification of Germany. And then when they exited this bar, and they saw that there is a commotion on the streets, that the people were moving towards the border. So they joined the crowd and they were among the first people to cross. And the events that they thought that would never happen, it kind of happened right after they talk how improbable it is. And this is the very good story to remember, that the entire history and your life, it can change overnight. It can change for worse, like on the 24th of February, but it can also change for better, and it can happen instantaneously. And now in this place where the Berlin Wall was stood, dividing the two cities, now bloom these beautiful sakura trees, which have been actually given to the city by Japan, another country who, along with Germany, has a very turbulent and controversial history in the 20th century. They gathered money and bought over 2,000 sakura trees and gave it to Berlin, and they planted it all over the city. So in this time of the year, end of April, beginning of March, it looks extremely beautiful. And yeah, most of these cherry trees, they were planted along this border where the wall used to stay. I see in this symbolism that all the scars, they eventually heal. Everything passes. The beauty and the nature remain. So with that message, I will end my today's incoherent story. Peace to Ukraine, freedom to Russia, нет войне.